A father continues to chastise, belittle, and insult his son Chris, who is training for competitive wrestling. Chris struggles with depression and ideation with death, constantly battling an inferiority complex imposed by his father. His brother, Julien, is schizophrenic, events in his mind unfolding in an incoherent order, fragments missing, his naivety, clumsiness and anxiety making it difficult to connect with others in the wider world. And Pearl, Chris's and Julien's harp-playing sister, offers glimmers of hope and comfort for Julien, pregnant with Julien's baby. This is Harmony Korine's Dogma 95 film Julien Donkey-Boy, an emotionally brutal portrayal of a dysfunctional family on the fringe of an inadequate America. In comparison to Korine's earlier film Gummo, Julien Donkey-Boy provides a personal sensitivity and empathy towards its characters and the ways in which they suffer mental instability, abuse, unfulfilled dreams, and an unshakable grief. It's Korine's sense of humanity towards an underseen side of America that, despite its challenging lo-fi aesthetic, makes Julien Donkey-Boy feel all the more heartfelt. The first impression given by Julien Donkey-Boy is that the film looks rough, ugly even. The DIY aesthetic, grainy imagery, low, often natural lighting, real locations, in-camera only images, and found props is due to the film's adherence to Dogma 95's vow of chastity, a set of strict rules filmmakers are encouraged to follow in the creation of a Dogma film. Dogma 95 was a movement formed by Danish filmmakers Thomas Vinterberg and Lars von Trier, intent on placing an emphasis on performances, themes, and the central elements of cinematic storytelling, shifting the focus away from technology, special effects, and anything deemed inauthentic. Ultimately, it was a movement intent on dismantling the major studio filmmaking status quo, giving creative power to smaller independent filmmaking crews who were adamant on producing films outside of the studio system. This mindset, a rejection of a mainstream studio convention that may limit confrontational independent filmmaking, can be found within Harmony Korine's interview with film critic Danny Lee shortly after the time of filming Julien Donkey-Boy. Reject the studio system. If you want to make a movie, it doesn't even matter what you film it on anymore. That's what excited me about Dogma, because there has to be a turning of the back on the sacred cows. It's Harmony Korine's distinctive rejection of cinematic norms here that informs how Julien Donkey-Boy unconventionally tells its story. Julien Donkey-Boy is intentionally abrasive aesthetically. The imagery is grainy, sometimes preferring long exposure still photographs strung together at a lower frame rate. Sequences may feel like sections are missing, purposefully edited so that dialogue is fragmented or completely avoided. These stylistic incoherences are reflective of Julien's own unmedicated, psychiatrically unsupported mindset, where his schizophrenic condition has become a barrier to understanding the world around him. This sense of being an outsider is even emphasised during scenes which feel too realistic, so authentic that these moments are possibly shot with a hidden camera, encouraging actors to perform and interact in open spaces with members of the public, unaware of anything being filmed. Authenticity is key here. Within the same interview with Danny Lee, Harmony Korine elaborated on personal inspiration for the character Julien. He's based on my Uncle Eddie. I spent 5 years with him and my grandmother when I moved to New York, before he was institutionalized. The character's based on that aspect of schizophrenia, where you're basically a normal person until your early 20s, and then from nowhere you start hearing voices. So this is him right on the cusp, and Ewan Bremner's perfect for it, because he's one of the only professional actors I've met with my stamina. Ewan Bremner's performance as Julien feels sympathetic, empathetic, and understanding. With Harmony Korine's personal family inspiration for the character, the collaboration between director and actor crafts a role that is emotionally complicated. Julien makes mistakes, sometimes from fear, sometimes from anger. Early in the film, he kills a child because the boy wouldn't allow him to play with a tortoise he found. But Julien is an emotionally vulnerable character too, following this drastic action with genuine remorse, praying for forgiveness, and burying the boy too. Adaptability, or lack of, seems to be a significant theme within Julien Donkey-Boy. The abusive father, played by legendary filmmaker Werner Herzog, at his most bitter, monologues about the idea of animals evolving, learning to speak. Some of Julien's friends at the school for the partially sighted discuss taking each day as it comes, the group having found and built a community to embrace them. Julien's brother Chris's intense unconventional training practice can be viewed as a form of adaptability, building his skill set for competitive wrestling, possibly to also alter his father's dehumanisation of him. The father's armless friend discusses adapting to the world when you're born differently. Adaptability is a notion present in many aspects of Julien Donkey-Boy, demonstrating differing levels of success. The armless man is successful at adapting to the world around him, learning to use his feet as an alternative to hands. However, Julien is unable to adapt. Julien tries to make friends, but people struggle to understand him. He tries to provide emotional support for his family, but his unpredictable behaviour causes friction, sometimes making Julien the target of his father's horrid berating. And probably most significantly of all, Julien illustrates signs of struggling to overcome the everlasting grief over the death of his mother. Within this household, amongst this family, grief has never left. The father dances alone, as if imagining a dance partner, likely his deceased wife. The father is a dehumanising abuser, and loss continues to echo in his degradation of his son Chris, such as when he offers to pay Chris if he's willing to wear an old dress that belonged to his mother, telling his son that he looks just like her. This is an action to resentfully demean his son, and yet the grief and loneliness is present here, further reinforcing the film's focus on grief. The difficulties of adapting for Julien is during a scene in which Julien role-plays a phone call to his deceased mother, with Pearl filling in the role as the matriarch. The scene portrays this roleplay as a comfort for Julien, reinforcing the sense that Pearl is a source of hope. She tells him, "Nobody wants to hurt you," regarding the voices in his head. The roleplay is also a comfort because it allows Julien the imagined scenario of speaking to his mother again. Nostalgic for being a child who could go to his mother, reflecting on her death in giving birth to Chris, Julien asks, "Do you remember, Ma?" as if she's actually on the phone to him. With the nostalgia and immersion here towards the idea of his mother, Julien connects with his grief over her death, and adaptability, unfortunately, strays further from reach. In the climax to Julien Donkey-Boy, loss rears its tragic head once again, with the slant towards unfulfilled dreams. Brief references within the film indicates that Pearl's baby is due to an incestuous relationship with Julien. It's an uncomfortable acknowledgement, but within the real world, incest does exist, and Harmony Korine doesn't shy away from this truth. It isn't far-fetched to suggest that parenthood is a dream for Pearl and Julien. It's only when Pearl falls abruptly during a day out ice skating, causing her to be rushed into hospital, that her baby is born dead. Clutching onto the dying dream of parenthood, and with his difficulty in adapting, grief serving as a barrier, Julien takes his dead baby from the hospital, carrying it on the bus, cradling his baby tenderly, as likely very real passengers move away, and upon returning home, he curls into bed under the covers with his child, trying to both comfort the baby and himself from the unwillingness to accept that once again, Julien and Pearl are facing a massive loss. Images of a figure skater on television, out of focus, plays during the final shot of the film, the lack of focus, and the television screen itself, serving as layers of distance for a dream out of reach, just like parenthood has become for Julien. A dream that, no matter how tightly he may cling to it, loss makes it impossible for him to grasp. In conclusion, Julien Donkey-Boy's Harmony Korine's follow-up to Gummo, both films firmly establishing Harmony Korine as a filmmaking voice willing to portray the fringes of American society. Whereas Gummo is cold, nihilistic and decaying, Julien Donkey-Boy is an empathetic view towards despair, loss, and the inability to adapt. It may be uncomfortable to discuss incest, abuse or death, but elsewhere in the world, people such as Julien, such as Harmony Korine's Uncle Eddie, exist, and it's with Korine's thoughtful personal exploration of these characters and their family that he extends his empathy for the audience to share in too. We watch Julien, and maybe we worry, or we're upset, frustrated, maybe offended, or possibly even touched by his experiences, even if we don't approve or condone his or his family's actions. If Julien Donkey-Boy makes us feel anything, it should be an empathy for underseen, troubled people left to the brink of society, where their dreams go to die, progress and adaptability isn't an option, and where they remain unsupported by a supposedly understanding world. A special thank you to my incredible tier Patreon supporter Gil, and to my super tier Patreon supporters Constantine Bombelli, Jamie and Milkway.